Hello, photographer Ronnixphotography, and in this tutorial I'll show you skin retouching from the very start to the very end. So this video is going to include color grading, frequency separation, how to best save your images, and how to do eye and teeth whitening, and how to save sharp images after doing skin retouching so that those images don't change in color after you've been able to save or post them on social media. So let's just start with this very tutorial. So right now I prefer to first of all color grade my images before doing any skin retouching in Capture One. So this is Capture One that I have right now. I'm just going to simply come and I'm going to reset my image. I'm going to reset the adjustments to this image. So this is the raw file, and the image we're going to be using today, the image was taken by Mutemwa Creations, and I'm going to link his YouTube in the description of this video so that you guys can check him out. He creates the same content like I do on this channel. So this is the raw file, and the very first thing I want to do in Capture One is first of all rotating this image. So I'm just going to come to right to my adjustments, and I'm going to come to rotation, and I'm going to rotate it to left, and this is going to make the photo in its portrait format. So after doing all that, the next thing I want to do is color grade and process the image to look really nice and beautiful before I can do skin retouching on it. So right now I prefer to use Capture One 21, and this is what I use to process the raw files. And if at all you have Camera Raw, you can as well use that to process your raw images. So in Capture One, what I tend to do, I come to the highlights and I simply drop them down, and I do the same for my whites to get more contrast within the image. So I come to the blacks and I simply take them down briefly and I add contrast to the image. Then I also open up the shadows slightly. Then when I feel like the image is a little bit overexposed, I come to exposure and simply reduce on the exposure of the image. Then if at all you're missing any adjustment in your Capture One, you can simply right click here and you can add whichever tool you're missing. And if at all you have or you want your Capture One to look the way mine is looking right now, just come right here to Window, Workspace, and you come to Migration, and you have them on the right hand side. So after adding the basic adjustments right here, I'm going to come to my levels and I simply add contrast by left clicking and dragging in my blacks just like that, and that adds more contrast to the image. So that looks okay. So after I've done all that, I come all the way back up and I create a new layer. So it is on the new layer that I right click here and I create a new field adjustment layer. So it is on this new field adjustment layer where I'm going to be color grading. So after doing that, I'm just going to scroll all the way down to my color editor. So under color editor, we have basic, advanced, and skin tone, and I'm going to come right to a skin tone. So when I come to skin tone, it has an eyedropper tool or a color picker tool. So when you left click on it and you zoom in by using Ctrl plus or Command plus on the keyboard, that's the shortcut for zooming in, you can simply sample the skin area that you want, or the area in the skin that you want the rest of the skin to look like. So the reason for this is because sometimes we have those magentas within the skin tone, so we just want the skin to look very uniform, and we have uniform skin tone. So I'm just going to look for a reference area in the image. So I'm just going to sample this area, and you can see as soon as I make a sample, or as soon as I click using the eyedropper tool, it gets me the range in which those colors are falling in this image. So the range includes the oranges, some part of the greens, yellows, oranges, reds, magentas. So I just want to remember in this image you have some bit of red, so I don't want to change or alter the red color within the image. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to come and I check on this view selected color range option, and what I'm going to do basically, I'm going to come back up to this wheel and I'm going to left click and drag the reds out of the selection, and you can see as I'm dragging the reds out, it is going to make the reds desaturated, and that is what I want. So the target area is going to remain in color. So after I've done that, I'm just going to come right to view selected color range and I uncheck that, and I'm going to come to the uniformity slider and I'm just going to zoom in for you so that you can see how these magentas are going to blend in and look more like the rest of the skin that we sampled right there. So with the uniformity slider right here, I'm just going to take it up, and as soon as I take it up, you can see the skin gets to look uniform. And I'm going to come to the saturation and I simply add a tiny bit of saturation. So Command minus, you can see when I turn on the before and after slider for this image, you can see the magentas are now gone and the skin is now looking uniform in this very image. So after I've done the matching of the skin tones, you can sometimes when you're color grading, the images tend to change color, for example in the makeup patterns, or the lipstick changes in color. So what we do in Capture One, we come and get the eraser tool and make sure the adjustment layer has been selected on which we color graded or evened out the skin of the model, and just zoom in, and you can simply press M on the keyboard to create or show you the new field mask. And with the eraser tool, you can simply paint or erase the color grading from those specific areas. So after doing that, we're just going to paint on the eyeshadow so that it doesn't alter or change the original color in the eyeshadow for our subject right here. So I'm just going to come and I'm going to eliminate that. So after you have done all that, you can come and press M to hide that mask from affecting the image. And you can see right now we have finished doing the processing of the image. So a good thing about Capture One, you can as well come and even take this further by taking down the highlights if at all you feel the highlights are a little bit too much for your liking. And you can do the same for the whites, and that is going to make the image look even better. So you can as well take this to the extremes if at all you really want to work more with the highlights or to do highlight recovery within Capture One. So we are now done doing the processing of the raw image, and let me show you a quick before and after for this. And you can see this is what we had before and this is after, before, after. So just want to take the image into Photoshop to do the skin retouching, and this is going to be an in-depth tutorial about skin retouching and color grading. So I'm just going to come and simply get this pointer, and I'm going to right click on the image. So when you right click, we have the option which says edit with, and just come to Photoshop right here. So when you come to Photoshop and left click on it, it is going to show you some other window right here that says basic, adjustments, and metadata. So I prefer to leave it in the basic. I prefer the format to be TIFF. Options, I prefer uncompressed, and I prefer 16-bit image. ICC profile, I prefer Adobe RGB 98, and the resolution, I prefer 300 pixels per inch, and the scale is fixed at 100%. So I'm just going to left click on variants or edit variants, and it's going to open the image into Photoshop for us to do the skin retouching and final adjustments to this specific image. So we're just going to wait for it to load and open up our Photoshop. So if at all you're finding this video really helpful, I just request that you hit the like button so that YouTube can push and recommend this video to so many people out there who are interested in learning about skin retouching, color grading, and beginners in Photoshop, and those interested in this very course like I'm showing you right now. So it is opening up in Photoshop, and when it is done opening, we're just going straight into frequency separation. So basically, what is frequency separation? Frequency separation is basically a skin retouching technique that is going to divide the image into the high frequency layer and the low frequency layer. So I'm using Photoshop 2020, and with frequency separation, we divide the image into the high frequency layer and the low frequency layer. So how this basically does or works, we come and create two layers from the background layer. We select the background layer and we press Ctrl Command J once and Ctrl Command J the second time, and it's going to create those two layers. Usually we name this, I'm just going to double click on this option, and I'm going to name this low, and I'm going to name this other layer high. So usually in the low frequency layer we have the colors and the skin tones, and in the high frequency layer we have the textures or the details of the image. So I'm just going to turn this off, turn off the high frequency layer and select the low frequency layer. So I only want to remain with the colors in this very layer, that is the low frequency layer. So just come to filter, and I'm just going to come to blur, and I'm going to come to Gaussian blur. So this is the most important step when it comes to frequency separation and skin retouching. So you can see when you take the radius all the way down, the image is going to come back to life, and the more you move the radius, the more blurry the image is going to be right in the preview and also this other image. So what you have to take into consideration is you have to look for an area or a point that has prominent textures in your image, and you simply left click on this slider and start moving it up the point when those details are just starting to disappear completely from the image. So you have to stop at that point when the details are just starting to get lost from your overall image. That is when you stop moving the slider. So you don't have to take it all the way up, and you shouldn't cram this radius because I may be having different details or different levels of textures in my image. So my radius may be different, and maybe your cameras may have taken a different level of details. So you shouldn't cram this. So the thing is about moving the radius up to the point when you're just starting to close out on the details. And when you're done with that, just come and press OK. And that is going to apply it on the image. So when it is done applying, you may notice that the image is going to look a little bit blurry, and that is what we want. So when the image is looking blurry, you're just going to come and select the high frequency layer, and in this layer we just want to retain the textures or the details in the image. So just select the high frequency layer, and after selecting it, just come right here to the eye icon and turn on the visibility. And after doing that, just come to image and come to apply image. So just want to extract the textures from the low frequency layer. So just come and select the low frequency layer from which you are going to be stealing or extracting the textures. Make sure this channel is RGB, and for if at all you have 8 right here, it means that your image is going to be 8-bit, and if at all you have 16, it means that your image is going to be a 16-bit image. So if at all you have an 8-bit image, you have to use a blend mode of subtract and opacity at 100%, preserve transparency and mask cannot check. The scale has to be 2 and offset 128. Make sure the preview is on, and make sure the invert option has not been checked. And when you zoom in, you can closely see the textures or the outlines of the image. But if at all you have a 16-bit image like I have right now, just come and change the blend mode to add opacity at 100, preserve transparency and mask cannot check. The scale this time has to be 2 and offset of 0, and make sure you turn on the invert option, and you'll have the same results right now. And just come and press OK. So after doing that, the next thing that we want to do is to reveal back the image that we had initially before. And the blend mode that is going to reveal back the image, just come right here to normal and look for linear light. So when you click on linear light, you'll have back the image the way it is meant to be. So I'm just going to use Command minus or Control minus to zoom out, and I'm going to select both layers by using Control and left clicking on both layers and pressing Control G or Command G on the keyboard, put them in a group, and I'm going to double click to rename that to frequency separation. So with frequency separation, I prefer to first of all use the mixer brush tool to blend or even out the transitions within the skin tone of the model. So I'm just going to come right here, and I'm going to come under the brushes, simply right click and get the mixer brush tool. And if at all you have an older version of Photoshop, you may find your mixer brush tool below here. And right now, I'm just going to right click and get the mixer brush tool. And as you're setting up the mixer brush tool, make sure it is the hardness as 0%, and make sure it is a clean brush. Make sure you select this option which says clean the brush after each and every stroke. The weight has to be 9%, the load of 75, the mix at 90, and the flow of 100%. Make sure sample all layers is not checked because we only want to work with the information in the low frequency layer. So we just want to paint or even out the transitions within the colors or skin tones which are in the low frequency layer. So make sure sample all layers is not checked. And after doing that, just come and turn off the texture or high frequency layer, and you're going to start painting or blending the transitions within the skin of the model. So you have to reduce or increase on the size of the mixer brush tool by using the open and close brackets on the keyboard. And if at all your mixer brush tool is showing like this cross icon, make sure you press the caps lock key, and you'll have it looking like this circle. So we have to blend the transitions right now. So I'm just going to simply start painting, and that is going to make the image or the transitions within the skin tones really nice and smooth and even better. So I'm just going to paint in just like that, and I may at one point have to forward this because I don't want this to be a long tutorial. So make sure you blend colors that are looking alike in this image, and you have to keep on reducing or playing around with different sizes of the mixer brush tool depending on the area that you're trying to work on. And you have to move the mixer brush tool in the direction of the area you're trying to work on in that case. So just come, and you can see I'm moving my mixer brush tool in an up down kind of movement, because the area I'm trying to blend the transitions is moving. You can see on the forehead I'm just moving it as I'm following the direction or shape of that area. So I'm just going to paint through, and you can take your time while working with the mixer brush tool. But when you're working with it, don't zoom all the way in, because we want to see the image at a distance, and we want to see every area that has uneven skin tone transitions within the photo or the image that we are trying to retouch in this case. And I'm just going to forward this, and I'll see you in a short while. So let me just forward this right now. So welcome back, and now when you're done blending or evening out the transitions within the skin tone, the next thing that you want to do is coming and turning on the texture or high frequency lasso. So just look at the before and after for the evening out of the transitions within the skin tone. And after doing that, you can just come and get your lasso tool and make sure new selection mode is active, and make sure the feather is 20 pixels, because we want the selections we make on the skin to be as smooth as possible. So make sure the feather is between 18 and 22 pixels. And still with the low frequency layer selected, we have to zoom in to the image. Just zoom in and come and make a selection on the skin. So you have to keep away from the edges and eyebrows. And after doing that, just come right to filter and come back to blend, come back to Gaussian blur. So this is more of a perfecting step for the skin retouching, or for the areas you may have missed out when you're using the mixer brush tool. So just come the radius and start moving it up to a point when you feel like you have a nice skin texture for your image. So I'm just going to leave it at around 14.8 and just come and press OK. And in order to apply this onto the overall image, you have to come and draw shapes the way an area is, and now come right click on that and apply the Gaussian blur. And when you feel like the effect is too much for your liking, just come and right click on a selection and simply come to fade Gaussian blur, and you can reduce on the effect of your Gaussian blur on the image. So I'm just going to leave everything at 100%, and I'm going to work on the image just like that and apply all these settings just like that. And you can see this is more like a perfecting step for the skin retouching. And when it comes to the nose area, you have to apply it on different sides, and don't apply it on the whole nose, because that is going to be flattening the nose in the process. So right click and come to Gaussian blur right there, and that is it. I only apply this technique to only the face. So I come to the high frequency layer and I get my clone stamp tool and I zoom in to remove blemishes or skin imperfections. So I'm just going to come and hold down the alternate key on the keyboard and left click cause the blemish, and simply left click to paint or remove the blemish from the model's face, just like that. You can remove these lines. And so when you select the clone stamp tool, make sure the sample is on the current layer and the blend is model. The blend mode is normal, opacity at 100 and the flat 100. Make sure the hardness is between 30 and 40, and that is what I do. Command minus to zoom out. So after doing this, the next thing that we want to do, we are now done doing the skin retouching before, and that's the after. So the next thing that we want to do is doing eye whitening. So just come to the adjustments and create a hue and saturation adjustment layer. And after creating it, take the saturation all the way down to around -97 and close that. Make sure the white layer mask is selected and press Ctrl Command I on the keyboard to invert that. Come under the brushes, simply right click and get the brush tool, and make sure the hardness is at 0, meaning the brush is soft. Opacity and the flat 100%. Make sure you have black and white right here. So you can reset that by using or clicking on these two small boxes. So in order to switch between black and white, just use X on the keyboard, or you can use this arrow to switch in between black and white. So make sure white is on top, and you can zoom in right on the image just like that, and just whiten the eyes. So just do that and paint in the white area of the eye just like that, and you can see it is going to whiten the eyes, and we are just going to be doing a perfect job And that is it for the eye whitening. So it is a very quick technique, unlike so many tutorials on YouTube. So after doing that, I feel like the image is lacking some contrast. I'm just going to come to the brightness and contrast, and I simply add some tiny bit of contrast. And I come to my selective color, and I'm going to darken the blacks even more. So come to the blacks and just take up my blacks slightly, and that is it. So I want to post the image on Instagram. I'm just going to come to the crop tool, and I select a ratio of 4 by 5, and I'm just going to crop the image a little bit, and I'm going to press enter, and it's going to crop the image in a ratio that is approved by Instagram. So when you're done doing all this, the next thing is saving the image so that it doesn't change in color after posting it or after putting it on another device. So the best way is simply coming right here to file, export, and come down to export as. When you come to export as, it is going to open another export as window for you. So in order to export this, you have to set up this the best way possible. So make sure the format that you select is JPEG, because this is supported by most social media platforms and websites. So make sure JPEG is the universal format that you have to choose, and the quality has to be 100%. Make sure you change the resample from bicubic automatic to bicubic sharper. The reason for this is because we want Photoshop to slightly sharpen the image that we are going to be saving. And after doing that, the most important thing is the color space. When you come to color space, make sure that you check these two boxes that are convert to sRGB and also embed the color profile. So when you tick these two boxes, we are still waiting for image to bring the preview. So when you tick these two boxes, it means that Photoshop is going to embed every single color adjustment that you apply to the image. And when you post the image after saving it, it is not going to be having any color change issues after you have been able to post it. So let me just wait for this to load in a bit, and when it is done loading, we are going to call it a day. So this is basically it about skin retouching, color grading, and everything you need to know about frequency separation. So let me just wait this to load, and the image is now failing to load. So it is done loading, and I'm just going to come and press export. So when you're done pressing export, you can choose where you want to save the image and simply press save. So basically this is it for this tutorial. And if at all you have learned something, don't forget to like this video, and don't forget to subscribe this channel. If at all you have been watching and you're not subscribed this channel, Ronnix from Ronnixphotography. Thank you for watching. I see you in yet more amazing tutorials, and don't forget to keep practicing and also keep creating.